But guys, in Bengals news, obviously there's a lot to make to do about what Joe said after Monday night's game, what he has said in the podium since then about how important T Higgins is to this team. And going into the year, I had this opinion about T Higgins that has since changed. And my opinion was that the money that he wants and the money that he's rightfully deserves, we just couldn't pay here in Cincinnati. We just can't give him that money because, quite honestly, he's not on the field enough. He's not on the field enough. When you play 10 games a year, 11, 12 games a year, you can't be getting 25 to 30 million or whatever T Higgins is going to get, and he will get paid elsewhere. But then I watched what it looked like on the field, and I started to kind of realize something. Like, I've always said this about Joe Burrow. How could you pay him $55 million when he's got injury concerns? Whatever. If he's not on the field, then the team's not. I'm getting to that point with T. I'm getting to that point with this offense looks so explosive with T Higgins on the field that maybe you just pony up and pay him and you keep this whole offense together. I'm not going to do that opinion today. What I am going to talk about is directly about Joe Burrow outwardly, I don't want to say pressuring the front office, pressuring the Bengals, but that's essentially what it is. We wanted this to happen. We want our players to speak up about, and we certainly want our quarterback to speak up about what he wants to make this team tick. My opinion is that's great. I believe in Joe. I love Joe. He's probably my favorite athlete ever. I'll defend Joe, and I've done it on this show, probably embarrassingly so. I put a tweet out after the Ravens game that I'm quite embarrassed about in hindsight because I looked absolutely crazy defending Joe Burrow. We've got to tread lightly here. We've got to tread lightly on letting one person pushing, like just controlling this team. That's the only thing I would say. I want Joe to speak his mind about what he wants. I want Joe to use his platform to say, I want T here. We got to make T. And if Joe means that, I want Joe to restructure his deal and keep T here. Like if he means it, like if he's saying it, you've got to show it as well. I just don't want to create an Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to create that. That's where I'm scared. Because I've seen multiple teams in years past give pretty much the reins to one person. The Jets did that with Aaron Rodgers. The Patriots did that with Bill Belichick after 2017, and it wasn't very good. The Texans did that with what? Bill O'Brien? Not very good.
Yeah.
You can't give the key. You can't let one person control the entire organization. Yes, his opinion should hold serious weight. And if what he's saying he means, then Joe, you're going to have to change something too. Like if you need T here, do what others have done, do what Tom has done, and restructure your deal to keep people around. But am I being a joke? I don't think I'm
I don't think that's crazy.
Joe. I just don't want one guy. I don't want to create a prima donna here in Cincinnati. I love Joe. I don't think he's that kind of personality. I just don't also want to actively facilitate that.
Why did that happen in Green Bay, and why is it kind of happening now in Cincinnati? It's because neither team at that time had faith in their front office. Green Bay continually did not give Aaron Rodgers the help he was asking for and needed, and the Bengals have missed on draft picks and free agency time and time again. I think that's absolutely a concern to give a player roster control. The guys in the front office have to be trusted enough that they can control the roster. But Joe Burrow's opinion and input certainly has to matter. That has to be something you hold with a very, very high regard, with a lot of weight. And if he says T Higgins is in need, I think you make a good point that you do have to ask him to restructure his contract. I think listening to those conversations Joe and Jamar were having yesterday, Joe Burrow continually saying that he's in need, Jamar Chase emphasizing that it is possible to get both of their deals done at the price points at which they want. My question is, who is he saying it's possible for? Is it possible for Joe, and Jamar to structure their contracts in a way where that fits into what the ownership wants to do? Or is he saying, hey, fans, they have the money to do it if they don't want to be cheap? I think that's a big difference going through there, and I don't think we'll know until the offseason. But I think the biggest point in this line that makes me think that they are going to come together and make something work is T firing his agent. I think the split from David Mulugheta means that maybe the messaging that you can get more money in the market, we have to hit the market, we have to negotiate with other teams. Maybe T didn't necessarily want to do that, and he's okay with taking a slight pay cut to stay in Cincinnati. That would be great. That would be awesome, and I think that's the most realistic route that he stays here. I think if you're bidding with the Patriots or the Commanders or any of these other teams in the open market giving him $30+ million, he's probably leaving Cincinnati. That's why I think the tag is really a formality, so you can negotiate with him one-on-one and then trade him if not. But I think that you're probably looking at extending T just with the way the last 48 hours have gone.
Zach Taylor is probably first in the line of I need to bring back T Higgins.
Yeah.
I'd imagine, because, Zach Taylor has one job, and it's to run the offense. Offense looks pretty damn good when T Higgins is out there. I'm going to push back a little bit. Good organizations don't let their star players run all over them.
Correct.
Bengals aren't exactly a good organization, and I'd argue that they haven't made a ton of great moves over the past 50 years. How many years the Bengals have been a franchise? I'm not going to sit here and say I definitely 100% trust Joe Burrow more than I trust the front office and the organization's ability to do good. But I would say this: they're probably neck and neck with me. If Joe Burrow wants something, I'm going to trust Joe Burrow knows what he's talking about. I could be wrong, and he could be wrong, and it sends the organization down a terrible path. That could absolutely happen. But I also don't trust Mike Brown, the Blackburns. I don't trust Duke Tobin. I don't trust anybody up top in this Bengals organization to know what they're doing either. So then it's, do you trust Joe Burrow or do you trust the guys up top? Because I don't know. I don't trust particularly the guys up top at all. So if that's the case, I'm going to roll with Joe Burrow on this one.
The problem with giving, and I want to hear Casey's opinion on this because I think he's on the opposite side of this. I trust Joe Burrow in the current moment. I really do. And like I said, and like we've all said, we want him to share his input because he is so fundamental. He is, the great part of this team, right? The reason that we think that we can get to the mountaintop someday is because that blonde dude, number 9, is because he's having an MVP season. All these things that we've seen from Joe Burrow since he's been drafted here in Cincinnati. He's answered the bell time and time again. The problem is when you start giving that much weight to a player, it doesn't take too much of a lean on that tower of cards to fall down. If it's working, it's great. Everyone's incredibly happy. It's soaring. But what happens when things start going awry? What happens when things in this person that you've given so much power in the organization isn't happy anymore? What happens then? And I know that's far away. And I know at least Everett in the chat didn't like when I compared Joe to Aaron. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying I don't want that. Casey, I don't know where you're at in giving Joe too much power. Let me emphasize this again. I want the Bengals to take Joe, what he says, seriously. And I want Joe to not just say things. I want him to actively be a part of it. Like if you say, hey, we have money, hey, we can make this happen, then I want you to be a part of it too. I want you to do active things towards it. But I also don't want to give you all the keys to the kingdom.
I don't think what they're doing right now it's certainly not giving him keys to the kingdom. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes, right.
I don't even really know if they gave Aaron Rodgers – the Jets certainly gave Aaron Rodgers keys to the kingdom. They refused to give Aaron Rodgers the whole set of the key chains to Green Bay, and they refused to give him weapons for a while. He struggled for a little bit. He was hurt on and off the field.
I'm talking about in Jets.
I know, but it really came to a boil because that organization refused to listen to Rodgers, and then he got upset and then went out. And then they tried to replace him. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Those were the things that led up to him getting upset, was that they weren't listening to Aaron Rodgers. And I think before then, we could all agree that Aaron Rodgers was an MVP-level quarterback, back-to-back MVP winner.
Yep.
We all thought that he would go to the Jets and at least be competent or above average. Didn't happen. But let's just say that he was good. I think we would have a completely different view on the Aaron Rodgers that we have today, which is, a guy that asked for all these bums and old guys to come back and recreate the 2011 Green Bay Packers, which just isn't realistic. What Joe was trying to do is keep the team together now.
Yeah.
Keep the team together now. And I think that's just completely different. But going forward, I want the team to listen to Joe because I think Joe has a pretty good touch on where the team is at, whether or not he's actually like saying it in front of the public. You can tell it's written all over his face. I mean, he's said it time and time again. He's had to be perfect. I think he knows that part of the issue with T leaving is that he has to be even more perfect. Mm-hmm. He has to be unbelievable. If T leaves, then that just makes it that much more difficult for him to perform at the level that he's performing at. So I don't know. I don't think that that's crazy to think that he can have a bigger voice and a bigger control, a bigger swing on what the front office does, because I don't know if the front office knows what they should do because there's so many holes on the roster. They should be given some direction by the leader of the team.
So here's the thing, and I'm going to quickly say this about Aaron Rodgers, and I want to jump off because I don't want this whole conversation of and I know that's one of my main points, but I don't want this whole conversation to be we can't make Joe and Aaron Rodgers. Here's the thing. Yes, the Green Bay Packers didn't give in to Aaron Rodgers' demands while he was in Green Bay. I think there's a false memory of what happened in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. They made 6 NFC championships in a decade. 5 in a decade. That's a pretty good run. So it's not act like it was a complete abject failure. And then, so he leaves because he wasn't happy what was going on there. And he goes to a team that lets him do whatever he wants. That team is now in hell. That team, the New York Jets before he got there, were terribly ran. Now he's pretty much running the show, and they're even more terribly ran. And they're going to ask him to leave probably at the end of this year. And what happened to the team that he wasn't happy with? Oh, wow. They look like Super Bowl contenders in the Green Bay Packers, bringing in a new Jordan Love. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to quickly hop off that because I just don't want this whole thing to spiral into a Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers thing. I just am weary of giving Joe all the power. Any organization, if you give one dude all the power, you better hope that that's the right guy. You better pray. And Joe might be the right guy for that. He's as close as we've got in this city. But you just got to be a little weary. No organization that is ran unilaterally succeeds. Not in the NFL. Not in the National Football League. You look at the most successful team of our era, Patrick Mahomes, sure, he pulls a lot of strings. Sure, I'm sure they listen to him. Andy Reid doesn't have anything really to do with the roster control. It's 3 heads of that organization. They've got a great GM, they've got a great coach, and they got a great quarterback. And that's why you win. And granted, it seems like we've only got one of those 3 of that recipe, right? We only got one person running the person running the roster control. We certainly don't believe in. The coach depends on who you ask. And we all like the quarterback. But you just can't in the National Football League have one dude unilaterally running the show. And that's what I'm wearing. I want to take his opinion. I want them to, if they want T, sure. But every opinion that Joe has, he can't just stand up on the podium and go, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and strong-arming the team into doing whatever he says.